I think we have a different approach to what is known as a path of development, because today's path of development is really handing over the natural resources of this country and all resources of this country to ensure profit maximization of big corporates. And we believe that this is based on a theory that help the rich to get richer fast, and some of that wealth will then normally trickle down to the poor. And this top-down approach, I think, is what we basically challenge. This is an approach which has led to disastrous consequences. India has the most obscene inequalities that the world has witnessed. India, while on the one hand you have such rich people, on the other hand you have one of the lowest tax rates. Therefore, we believe that the resources have to be used to ensure a much more a basis of equity, a basis of equality. And I think that is where the CPIM and the left differs so fundamentally from the policies of both the BJP and the Congress, because we believe that unless you ensure employment, unless you ensure a much greater purchasing power, more money in people's pockets basically, and more money in people's pockets means a totally different trajectory of growth than what we are seeing today. Basically, the present Right to Food Act is going to create much more food insecurity rather than food security, because it is still based on a completely fraudulent system of targeting, which says first you have to prove that you're poor, then you will be given a BPL card, and only if you have a BPL card you are eligible for food security, which is totally wrong, because we have enough resources in our country. We have huge stocks of food grain which are getting damaged, which are being eaten by rats, but still our people are hungry. India is really at the bottom of the list as far as the global hunger index is concerned. We have the highest number of malnourished people. So basically our Food Security Act will ensure the universal right to food security, to subsidize food grains. We are saying a minimum of 35 kilograms per family with a maximum rate of 2 rupees a kilo. And I think we have the resources to ensure that. Price rise is simply because it's totally linked to government policy. For example, you look at petroleum products, and the hike in the prices of petroleum products like petrol and diesel have a cascading impact on the prices of all essential commodities. This regime has raised the price of petrol 28 times, the price of diesel 18 times, whereas the tax on these, as far as the government revenue is concerned, has not been lowered at all. So here you are talking about global prices, but at the same time you are actually garnering revenue from that regime. Therefore, if the government would give up its taxes, and if it was even at the global price today, we would be able to have a much more controlled regime, instead of which they've deregulated the entire petrol and diesel and petroleum product sector. And this deregulation has led to the kind of price rises that we're seeing. That's one of the reasons. The second reason, I think, is also because, a strong rationing system has a very salutary impact on market prices. And here we've been destroying our rationing system. Instead of putting more products in the rationing system, you've even removed sugar from the rationing system, which has led to a huge rise in market prices of sugar. The third is you are allowing commodity speculation in essential commodities: onions, potatoes, sugar, wheat, rice, pulses. You're allowing it to be traded in the futures market, which is it always pushes up spot prices. So if you're going to allow speculation and profit making on trading of essential commodities instead of a ban on it, which is what the parliamentary committee has suggested, it's bound to have an impact. And then lastly, you have huge black marketing. So I think our regime would basically to bring back an administered price system for petroleum products, we would definitely ban speculative trade in essential commodities as recommended by the Parliamentary Committee. We would strongly stamp down on all kind of black marketing, and we would strengthen the public distribution system, and that is bound to have a good effect. I think it's absolutely disgusting, it is condemnable, and it really shows the levels to which our political discourse and debate have reached in this country. And it is a reflection of the most feudal patriarchal mindsets which still prevail among a fairly substantive section of those who claim to be in politics. And also because there are really no laws. Even the Code of Conduct and the People's Representation Act does not have any regulation at all of these kind of sexist, misogynist statements. I have been, advocating, and I strongly advocate, a code of conduct for men in public office or men in important political positions, that if there has to be a code of conduct which will prevent these kind of misogynist comments, because they do influence public opinion, because these are people who have influence among the public, and comments like this are extremely derogatory, and it must be prevented, it must be stopped. Well, it's really a question of power, isn't it? Because the major political parties in practice, they're very far from the actual promise that they have made to get the Women's Reservation Bill. And I remember in the Rajya Sabha, when the left was supporting the UPA, how much pressure we had to put on the government to ensure that the bill was passed. And ultimately, it was passed, but that happened in 2010. Now, if you look at it, the actual distance geographically from the Rajya Sabha to the Lok Sabha is not even 5 minutes. It took 3 years, but there was absolutely no movement forward, even a step, to bring it from the Rajya Sabha to the Lok Sabha. And that's because power equations change, because you're going to have 1/3 of the seats taken away at one go from men who think they have a monopoly right to power. And I think that's upsetting many people, and that's the reason why. But I still believe that this is an idea whose time has come. Women have proved themselves so well at the panchayat and the local body level, and I don't think you can stop this from actually being implemented. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. I believe that the continuing violence, the continuing practices of untouchability against the scheduled castes and the scheduled tribes are based in a cultural pattern which believes that the caste system is an intrinsic part of Indian society, and that is what we challenge. Unfortunately, those forces who talk in the name of social justice, in fact, they only tend to replicate the caste system in a different way. Therefore, the answer to this is threefold. One, to take very, very strong action against those who practice untouchability. Two, to ensure that there is economic empowerment at every level through a legal framework. It's not just a question of reservation of jobs being somebody's, it's a constitutional right. And if there are huge gaps in it, that is because it is not being properly implemented. Why is the private sector exempted from it? So the private sector must be brought into it, and economic empowerment, which includes land reform, as we did in West Bengal, as we have seen with the West Bengal experiment, that when you give land, when Dalits have assets, they have the strength to challenge the vested interests in the village, in the rural areas, and that is what is required. And thirdly, anybody speaking or committing any type of action against the scheduled castes and the scheduled tribes, they have to be very strongly punished, I think. Those are the different aspects of it, and particularly as far as Dalit women are concerned. Well, firstly, I'm very proud to be a member of the Communist Party of India, Marxist. And to be a communist is a lifelong endeavor. Our great leader, Comrade Sundaraya, once said that you can never judge whether a man or a woman is a communist until their last breath, which means the endeavor to be a communist, the endeavor to live your whole life as a communist, is not something that happens just because you get party membership. It is something which you have to live every day of your life. And I believe that in today's world and in today's politics, where dishonesty, where self-service, where personal gains, where cronyism, where compromise with the most venal forces in society has become almost the norm in Indian politics, I think communists, members of the Communist Party, do stand out as people who are dedicating their lives to a cause much larger and much bigger than their own. And I believe India needs that moral compass and that guidance which left movements, and particularly the communists, can provide.